I want to, if I can, maybe start not like on a because it's positive note, but like there's things that I think are I agree with that should be addressed. Like Joe Biden, we've got to be real. The whole idea of like a heartbeat away from the presidency has rarely been more real for a vice president than in this case. So you're looking at potentially the first black woman to be president, the first woman of color to be president, the first South Asian woman to be president. It would set a huge precedent. It would symbolically, in a country that has historically oppressed many of these groups, um, show a sign of progress, at the very least symbolically. Um, and like, like I was young-ish when Obama was elected, and as a black man who's like trying to do things like the book smarts kind of way, I even saw like a little bit of inspiration into it, even though like as I would get older and learn a little bit that Obama wasn't down with all the politics that I really cared about. So um, I guess like speaking to that, is there any sort of like feeling where based on your identity, you can kind of be or acknowledge the moment of Kamala Harris and that this is a really historic thing?
I can absolutely acknowledge that this is historic. I can absolutely understand why so many women of color, Black women, South Asian women are celebrating Kamala. Look, I get it. It feels good to see somebody who shares your identity winning, especially when you understand all of the structural obstacles that were in their way. Like you mentioned, I remember the crazy celebrations when Barack Obama was elected, like out in the streets. I was in college, people dancing on top of cars in the streets of Cambridge, Massachusetts. Like, I remember that. But I think at 31, I'm just less impressed by the politics of representation. I'm just much more deeply invested in policy. Like I just want to know what your legislative agenda is going to be. And I'm just not sure what that's going to be when it comes to Biden Harris. But I get it. I really do.
Yeah, I totally do. And I'm also very sympathetic to the trauma of this administration. There are unfortunately some people that I was semi adjacent to on the left at a certain point who tried to spin Trump winning, not that they wanted him to win, obviously, but that it would be ultimately a good thing for the country because I don't know, in some like weird, warped, twisted way, it would mobilize progressives and mobilize the left to really build into a force. And like you can say something about like the rise of Bernie Sanders, the rise of Elizabeth Warren, and the rise of like more people getting more active and pushing past what the Democratic Party establishment is. That has nothing to do with like the pure chaos that the Trump administration has caused. And the lasting ramifications that are going to be felt like ripple effects for years to come. And so I completely, to that extent, I sympathize with, okay, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, there are some strengths with Kamala Harris as a person, maybe as a leader, but even as like a legislator, there are those strengths. But, and it would be not Trump. The option would be not Trump, I will be clear. But I say all that to preface, like, yeah, there's a lot of stuff I find about, like, I mean, I found a lot of stuff about Joe Biden problematic as hell. I still haven't forgotten about, like, the whole Tara Reade case that kind of was, it was interesting how the Democratic Party kind of coalesced around Joe Biden and that when they had made a case about holding horrible men to account. I I'm very wary of this same sort of coalescing around Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, forgetting the kinds of policies that they fought for and stood for during the Democratic primary.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. I think um, the political calculation of let Donald Trump win, and then that will inspire the masses to move much more left, and then that will set us up for a radical leftist or a democratic socialist in 2020. Didn't pan out. I see people saying the same thing, and I'm like, you guys, we tried that, right? Like, remember her in 2016? Tried that. It didn't pan out. It turns out there are many, many more people in the electorate who are moderates who just desire, no matter how nonsensical it might seem, for a reversion to quote unquote normalcy, a reversion to the, halcyon days of the Obama Biden era, right? Like that, unfortunately, is most of the people who show up to vote. So I don't know. I think we're in a really tough spot as progressives, but I do know that no matter what my personal feelings about Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are, I do not want 4 more years of Trump Pence. And so I am willing to say that I will absolutely vote for Joe Biden in November, and I will encourage anybody who I have access to do the same. And yeah, that's hard. It's hard.
Yes,
It's hard,
yes.
and it's a hard thing to reconcile, but this is just where we are.
Yes, and I again like that this would be a historic moment. I admire that aspect of it, and Trump is really bad, and they would even like a return to the pre 2016 ish is better than this. This is so bad. I haven't even gone to the detention centers and the handling of COVID. Like even Mitt Romney wouldn't have screwed this up this badly. Like it's absolutely has to be said for that. I think that's the responsible opinion to have, but I really want to kind of use this opportunity to get into the specific like policy issues I have with Kamala Harris, if you like don't mind like me sort of see with that. So like
Sure.
for me, I think the biggest issue of or like one of the biggest issues of our time, besides climate change, is Medicare for all. Like everyone needs health insurance. It's ridiculous that your health insurance, if you even do have it, if it's good and you're privileged in that sense, it's tied to your employer. And so if for some reason you lose your job, let's say, because there's lockdowns and a pandemic that's being handled very poorly by the president, you lose your health insurance and there's a health scare. There's this is such a no-brainer thing. And for a moment in the beginning of the primaries, I thought Kamala Harris was going to jump onto the Medicare for all bandwagon because I think Bernie Sanders and a couple of more other progressive senators proposed it, and then Kamala Harris signed on to it. Actually, it might have been Kamala Harris and Bernie proposing it together with Ed Markey in the Senate, if I remember correctly.
I
But
think
they put it forward. But Bernie, as usual, is very staunchly like Medicare for all, give people as much as possible. Whereas Kamala Harris kind of sort of adapted it to saying, well, we wouldn't get rid of private insurance in all cases. Actually, employer-based care is all right or fine in some aspects. It was like a watering down that she didn't seem to really kind of, like make amends for throughout the rest of the campaign.
Yeah, I mean, I think the tricky thing about both Joe Biden and Kamala Harris is you don't really know what they actually believe. You don't really know what they actually stand for because their policy positions shift so much. They are so they're maybe too attuned to public opinion, like maybe paying too much attention to polling. And so there's not any real like firm ideological commitments evidenced in what they put forth as their legislative agenda. So yeah, I was excited that at the beginning of her campaign because I thought that she was going to be a little bit more left. She has voted pretty progressively in the Senate, but we see that she walked that stuff back when she realized that she wasn't going to be able to gain a lot of traction in the Sanders Warren lane. She decided to pivot and okay, right? Like take your, don't throw away your shot, like, get in where you fit in. But as a voter with very strong ideological commitments, that concerns me.
Yeah, and like this is the Democratic primary is the time for like the most engaged voters to really like shop around for candidates and like really figure out what they want to. And like we're both very engaged people with this for sure. And I'm not in the camp of thinking that candidates need to be consistent on all things or they need to be litmus test on certain issues. I think candidates should be, or politicians in general, I think this could also apply to people, should really stand to their convictions, like defend what they're talking about, try to like make sense of what they're talking about. And if you decide that you change your opinion or you learn some other perspective, admit that, come talk about that, and at least defend that. But don't try to like waffle around it thinking you can say one thing and win some people over and act as though those other people won't follow up. To me, that's like with all these things, one of the main arguments is, oh, you're looking at Kamala Harris's past record. These are different things that are not under her control. But almost more than I notice these things that Medicare for All is a policy issue, I also pick up patterns in how you respond to criticism. Because in the best of times and the worst of times, a president's going to be criticized by their party sometimes and by everyone else. And like by the Republican Party, they're at their death knell right now. They're going to be really, really vicious at this point, in my opinion. It's already really bad. Like, again, I was talking before, like, I can't believe birtherism is already back, but like, it's going to get really ugly with Kamala Harris and Joe Biden against Donald Trump and that's happening. But a politician needs to be able to handle criticism, and especially legitimate criticism from people who are mostly on your side, and work with that, respond to that. I think AOC is a good example. I think there were times when Barack Obama was a good example. There were a couple times when Hillary did okay, Bernie did all right sometimes. But a big thing I noticed with Kamala Harris is that there would be mistakes that would be pointed out by people to her side or maybe a little bit to her left. There were good faith arguments, I felt, and instead of dodging them, she'd either dodge them or the pattern would emerge where she would kind of dig in her heels and really kind of argue that she was right in the things that you feel strongly she's wrong about.
Yeah, yeah. I think this is rough because yes, we want politicians to be receptive to criticism, and I do think that we should embrace people who change their minds when they have a new set of facts, when they are exposed to alternative viewpoints that they find compelling. I don't necessarily know if just flip-flopping or waffling whenever you think that the polling is not on your side is I think that there's like a tough balance to strike here, because especially because of how polarized our political landscape is at this time. Like, any Democrat, you're going to be challenged. Like any position that you take, you're going to have to fight for. And I do want to know that when it comes time to fight, that you are actually going to fight. Like you are not just going to, I don't know, take a month-long break in the middle of a deadly pandemic, right? Like I want to know that you have the best interests of the people, no matter what the other side is going to do, because we know that they're going to be vicious.
Yeah. Friend of the show, Pete Buttigieg, actually had this really good comment. I'm kidding. He had this really good remark. One of the few things that he said that wasn't just like a full-on platitude. That was like, look, they're going to call Bernie Sanders a socialist. They're going to call Joe Biden a socialist. They're going to call Pete Buttigieg a socialist. You just got to just like roll with what you're going to do and listen to legitimate criticism, but like don't listen to bad faith actors. That's why I tried to make that kind of difference. So I 100% agree with you there.